Hi, you're welcome to the 100% Joy series. And today I'm going to start off this conversation by telling you a story about a particular movie I saw a while ago. I want to talk about foundations in relationships, why it's important to have the right foundation in relationships. Now, I'm going to use an illustration from a movie. And I'm sure you guys are used to me using movies as illustrations for my conversations now because I love movies and I believe that storytelling is the way that we communicate, we learn, we grow, and we share experiences that we have or other people have that we can learn from and apply in our own lives. I mean, there's no how something you've watched hasn't resonated with you or at least pointed you in one direction or the other. So that said, I want to talk about Anikulapo. It was a movie that came out on Netflix a few months ago and it sparked up a lot of conversation on social media. We had Saru played by Kunle Remy and Arolake played by Bimbo Ademoye. And then, of course, there was an older, wealthy woman played by the amazing Shola Shobowale. Now, for me, Anikulapo was a story that, brought to light the importance of building healthy foundations or building your relationships on healthy foundations. But people saw different angles to that story, which is okay. I mean, we could all watch the same thing and everybody gets a different message. So that's why I'm sharing it with you today. So Saro was a young man who actually sojourned from his town to another town looking for greener pasture. And then he gets to this town. Saro is a man who is easy on the eyes. And then he meets this, just about when he gets into town, he meets this older woman who offers him a job, helps him settle into town. And she eventually sets her eyes on him. And she actually does have an affair with him. But she was very specific about her boundaries. She wasn't looking for a husband. She was just looking for company, And I think that actually, defined the boundaries of their relationship. Eventually, she built him a house, helped him set up his business. He was a cloth maker. And he was so good at it that it brought him before the king. And he was going to make clothes for the king's wives. Now, the king's last wife, called Arolake, was a beauty. Her senior wives envied her and she was the love of the king's life. But Arolake had her own backstory. Her father gifted her to the king when she was a young girl. She didn't have a choice in it, which obviously was what it was like in those days. But I can imagine how, unhappy that must have made her at some point. And then Arolake didn't have children. She had been trying. In fact, I think at some point, I noticed that her older wives must have even sabotaged her one way or the other not to be able to take him. So Araka wasn't really happy in the king's palace. And then Saru walks in this fateful day. They see each other. I'm thinking is, the feeling was mutual. They both liked each other. But I think for Saru, he could have let it go because she belongs to the king. But Arolake really, really liking Saru, ambushes him on the way home and had her way with him. Strange, isn't it? Because it was supposed to be the other way around. Anyway, eventually they begin to have this secret affair. In as much as Saru was scared, it was, it was still an affair that he was vested in. And his older lover warned him not to put his life in danger because he's looking for things in the wrong places. But I guess Arolake's charms were stronger because she now brings up this crazy idea that they should elope. He wasn't going to go with it at first, but then word gets out that Saru was, having an affair with the king's wife. So Saru was dragged out, beaten, and killed. But by some twist of luck or fate, this mythical bird now drops a particular god right in front of where Saru was lying dead and Arolake was crying by his side. And then as the bird left, Arolake picks up the god, the small god, and she puts it in her wrapper. Now, they start, immediately this happens, Saru comes back to life. and then they begin their journey out of the forest, and then they go to a new town. Well, an occasion arises where the farmer who helped, the hunter who helped them get home, and his only son had passed. And Arolake just put two and two together that I'm sure this thing that was given to him, for him to have come back to life, it must be some sort of power or mystical power. So she gave it to him and said, look, this came when you were lying dead. Use it. I'm sure that there's a reason you have this. And he used it, and the boy came back to life, and that was the beginning of a new life for Saru and Arolake, because he started, using this power to bring people back to life. People were paying him, giving him gifts. It was bringing him before great men, kings. Saru now, started amassing wealth, started getting richer. Arolake and Saru got married, but eventually the wealth got to a point where Saru looked around and he knew that the real wealth was in having children of his own and a home, as it was in those days. So the first woman he takes was Arolake's maid. She gets pregnant, he takes her in, and she becomes his second wife. Arolake was heartbroken, but there was nothing she could do. And the maid became haughty, started insulting Arolake. He took a second wife, so now there were three. And Arolake was so miserable because things had changed. He didn't really have time for her. He spent more time with the women who were conceiving, and the other women kept insulting Arolake. And then, of course, at some point, he let out the secret that she used to be a king's wife. So Arolake had had enough, and she gets her stuff together and decides to leave Saru. One of those days when, Saru wasn't, around. But before she goes, she takes the gourd and pours out the content, covers it and puts it back for Saru, and leaves. Now she decides to destroy him before leaving. That was where a lot of arguments actually, started on social media. Did she really ever love him in the first place? If not being with her meant he shouldn't, prosper, or he shouldn't be with anybody else, or he shouldn't, have a life, or he shouldn't move forward with his life. And if she did, was it right that she sabotaged him before leaving? Was it even right that she left the king, hurting the king to be with him? Was it even right that, he took other women after her? But remember that in the days they lived, men were naturally polygamous. So everyone had an argument for it. He was ungrateful to her. Some people felt, oh, she was mean to him, and all that went on. But for me, what struck is, what foundation is your relationship built on? What foundation was the relationship of Saru and Arolake built on? It was very important to know what the foundation was, because whatever the foundation was is what will keep the relationship going or destroy the relationship. So when she leaves, Saru is called in to the king's palace because the king's son had passed. And he went there greedily. He even asked the king that he wanted the king's daughter as compensation for raising his son. That had already infuriated the king, but he didn't have a choice. And he didn't know that his God was now powerless because they had poured out what was in it. By the time he used it, the king's son didn't come back. He used it again. I mean, I found that part of the movie really funny. He used it like 3 times and it didn't work. And he was beaten and dragged out of the city and killed again. So at the end of the day, this sparked up a lot of conversations. Some people felt that some people questioned the fact that did Arolake really love him? If she did, even if she was so heartbroken, should he have sabotaged him before leaving? And some other people felt Saru was so ungrateful to Arolake. That is obviously why he treated her the way she did after everything he sacrificed for her. Some people said, he didn't ask her to sacrifice anything. It was her choice. She didn't even ask him what he wanted, whether he wanted to be with her, because I remember that she kept convincing him that they could be together. So at the end of the day, conversations were going back. And for me, this movie was teaching us something really important. The fact that it's important to build our relationships on the right foundation. So when we come back, let's look at why it's important to build your relationship on the right foundation and what is the right foundation for a healthy relationship. Don't go away. I'll be right back. Welcome back. We're looking at how important foundations are in relationships. But before we go into that, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, hit that red button and turn on your notifications so anytime I post a new episode, you're the first to know. Now that's done. Why are foundations important in relationships? Now, in life, everything we do, the foundations we build them on is what determines whether those things will last or not. Look at houses. Before a house is built, a lot goes into the foundation. People put in so much money into the foundations of a house. And if that foundation is not built properly, what happens? Eventually the house will come collapsing, like some of the stories that we've seen on the news about houses that just come crumbling down and people lose their lives. So foundations are always very important. Look at education. If you don't get the proper foundation education-wise, at some point it begins to affect you. So in everything we do, foundations are very important because that's the bedrock of whatever you're doing. Now, for me, I believe that in relationships, if your relationships are built on the foundation of lies, deceit, self-interest, I believe that those relationships never last. Even if they do, they end up being very turbulent, and somebody always ends up either getting hurt or going through immense pain. Now, it's your choice to stay and live in pain for the rest of your life, given that you have made a choice, or it's also a choice to decide to make better choices that will serve you. Now, when you go into a relationship or a partnership with somebody, it's very important that you set parameters that are definite and precise. It's important that you know what you want, and you have to be sure that what you want is what the next person also wants. Because when you start thinking about just yourself, you get carried away in the moment. It's this is what I want. I like this person. I want to be with this person. Or, oh, I'm ready to get married. This person available. This is the kind of person I want to marry. Or I want to do business. This person has what I want. So it doesn't matter if what we're doing doesn't favor this person. This is what I want to do. You end up creating problems for yourself at the end of the day, because for a relationship to actually thrive, it has to be based on honesty, on truth, and mutual interest. We both must know that whatever we're doing is benefiting the both of us in some way or the other. And if it's not, it's important to know that, okay, this is what I want. It's not what you want. It's okay to be able to walk away from it. But most times we don't, because we're so, immersed in what we want. We don't think of the future. We don't think of what happens if we stay there. We just want to go into it. In the case of Anikulapo, in the case of Saru, Arolake was already married to the king, but she saw him and she desired him. She didn't think of the consequences of her leaving her husband for him. She just needed, to get away from this life that was suffocating her. She didn't think of the implications of what she was doing to him. Because, if you really love somebody, you're going to think about all the variables in a situation before you start making a decision. At the end of the day, her decision cost him his life. Thank God it's a movie and he came back. Just imagine if it was real life, Thank God it was a movie, and for some reason, there was some fantasy to it and he came back. But if we move that to real life, you're married to a king and you decide to, I'm not doing this anymore. I want to be with this person. But you're not thinking about how your decisions affect every other person in that equation. You're only thinking about how it affects you. I'm not saying that you should stay in situations that don't work for you because you're scared of, because you're taking other people's interest to mind more than yours. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's important to look at all the variables when you're making a decision and make sure that in the end or in the long run, you're not hurting yourself. Because anytime you hurt people, you end up hurting yourself. Think about it. You might not feel the adverse effect immediately, but you always eventually feel it at some point or the other. I was thinking about something when Arolake packed her things and was leaving after all the years that she had spent with Saro. I was thinking, was she going back to her village? How was she going to face the king? Would she be accepted back? Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure she had been exiled. Or is she going somewhere else to find a new life? I mean, she wasn't getting any younger. I don't think she even, okay, well, she makes beads. How is she going to live? This is someone that has always lived in affluence. So, I was thinking about all those things in my head, and it just hit me that no matter how you hurt others or make decisions that do not serve others, in the end, those decisions don't serve you more than any other person. Every other person can get up and go. I'm sure the king married another wife. Saru, of course, had other wives and children. He will miss her, but I mean, he's going to move on, because apparently in the movie he was still brought back to life at the end of the film. I'm sure there will be a part 2 or something. Every decision Saru made in the film, as far as I was concerned, were decisions he was making that served him. At the point Arolake told him she wanted him to run away and be together, Saru was not probably ready to even settle down with anybody. He was just trying to make his way through life. Now, by the time he was not ready to have a family, he started a family with who he wanted to start a family with. But it didn't go down well with Arolake because she believed that they already had a family. Sometimes what we want is not what other people want. Like I said, this is not just about relationships, it's about any partnership. So we have to be honest with ourselves and honest with the next person to know, what is it you really want? Is it what I want, or is not what I want? Don't be in a hurry, don't be impatient, don't think that, oh, if I lose this, I won't get that tomorrow. No, life doesn't work that way. Time is a human concept, but we always feel that we're running out of time, which is why we make a lot of hasty decisions, or we get into a lot of hasty liaisons that end up costing us one thing or the other. When we come back, let's look at how we can ensure that our relationships are built on healthy foundations. Don't go away, I'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking about why it's important to build our relationships on healthy foundations. Now, how do we ensure our relationships are built on healthy foundations? First of all, you have to be honest with yourself and your partner, because being honest with yourself is being honest with the next person, and being honest with the next person is being honest with yourself. As much as any decision you make should serve you, it shouldn't be made at the expense of the next person. For instance, you're ready for marriage or you want a serious relationship, and the next person is not, or the partner you want to go into that with is not. You shouldn't manipulate, pressure, or force them or cajole them into that marriage or relationship, because it doesn't guarantee that that relationship will work or guarantee that you'll be happy in it. Because some people feel, oh, eventually, everything will fall into place. No, eventually nothing falls in place as long as it's not in place from the beginning. The truth is, you can't force people to choose you. People would live life on their own terms, just like you should live life on your terms. So do not expect people to live life on your terms. Now, secondly, you must define the parameters of your relationship. I'll give an example, but it's not such a great one, but I mean, it's still an example. The old woman that he met when he came into, Saru met when he came into the town, she had an affair with him. But at some point when he was getting the wrong picture about their relationship, she made it clear to him that at my age, I'm not looking for a husband. So I don't know why you're getting so vested in it. You have your whole life ahead of you. Now, even though that's a very poor example, but that is somebody drawing the parameters or defining the parameters of what she has with Saru. So I think that saved her a lot of headache or heartache, because at the end of the day, he eloped with another woman. But because her mindset was not in a place where she had her head in the clouds, it didn't make a difference to her, because today Saru, tomorrow somebody else. Like I said, it's not a great example, but I just had to use it. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, you must define the parameters of your relationship, partnerships, friendships with people. And sometimes it has to do with you setting boundaries. People should know where you start and where they begin. They should know when you start, where you end, where they start, where they and where they end. This would make sure that your relationship is built on mutual respect. So everybody knows what is expected. Now, if at the end of the day you set or define your parameters and the next person is not going down well with the next person, then it's okay not to even begin whatever partnership it is, or friendship or relationship or whatever in the first place. Because now you know that this is what this person is about and this is what you are about. So sometimes we hide how we feel or what we really want because we're afraid that when we say it, we might lose out on what we stand to benefit or gain from the relationship or partnership. And you see, that's already a red flag because it shows that relationship is already built on lies or on secrets or on dishonesty. So it's important to set parameters. Define your parameters. What do I want? What do you want? Come to the table. Be sure about what it is before you begin any journey, whatever the partnership, the relationship or friendship is. Finally, make sure that whatever decisions you're making are decisions that do not have adverse consequences on you or other parties involved. Maybe not now, but maybe in the next 5, 10, 15 years into the future. One of the things I've noticed is that sometimes we're so immersed in what we want now, we don't think about what happens 5, 6, 10 years down the line. Is this still going to work? Is this thing going to matter? Is this what I really want? How is it going to play out? If there are other people going to be, if other people are going to get involved at that point, will it be worth it? Is it going to work out? We have to think about all these things. You have to look at all the variables when you're making decisions, so that at the end of the day, you don't make a decision now that ends up coming to bite you in the back tomorrow or in the future, because you want to make decisions that give you peace, decisions that makes life beautiful for you. And sometimes we know when we make those decisions, we're not at peace inside of us. We know that whatever the decision we're making has consequences, but we damn those consequences at that time because it is what we want. So we have to learn to be able to suppress our selfish urges or suppress those feelings of impatience when we want something now and we feel that there's no time, especially when we know that those things are going to come with consequences. Don't always think that you can handle those consequences. If there's a safer option, if there's a way that things can work out without those consequences, but your problem is time, I suggest you go with what works. One of the things I want you to do is ask yourself this question anytime you're making a decision that you know has a long-term effect. It might have to do with a relationship, it might have to do with other parts of your life. This decision I'm making in the next 5, 10 years, is it going to empower me or disempower me? When you're able to answer that question, that simple question, you know whether you're making the right choice or not. But you have to be honest with yourself, because in the end, being true to yourself is being true to the next person. That is it. Because we're all connected. Being true to yourself is being true to the next person. So I hope that from today, you start thinking of you start taking seriously the foundations you build your friendships and your partnerships on. Remember, truth will always stand the test of time. So choose truth and honesty always. That's all from me today. Thank you and bye-bye.